Hello, you guys. So, some of you may know that a couple of years ago, I began a series called the Mixed Race Rabbit Hole. And this series was inspired by a conversation that I saw being had in Australia. Now, this was at the time where the reparations conversation was a really hot button topic. And, people were really pushing for that. And I was looking toward Australia because the Australian Aboriginals did get reparations, right, for the atrocities against Black people in their country. And what was happening is you had a lot of not even biracial people. I mean, some biracial people were included, but you had quadroons, you had octoroons. You had full-fledged blonde hair, blue-eyed white people that were 1/28th% Black who were getting Aboriginal reparations. And I was looking at an Australian talk show, and they were having like a panel of guests. And on this panel of guests, yes, I'm going to review the Fox Soul thing right now, Sin. On this panel of guests, um, I noticed that the whole audience and the entire panel were not Black. There was one Black woman there, one, and she wasn't given the space to speak. It was just all these mixed people debating about whether they should be able to claim Black Aboriginal or not. And I was like, the insubordination of this, right? The insubordination of it is something that is, problematic for me. And so it was interesting that really recently, just 4 or 5 days ago, Cynthia did a panel over on Fox Soul, which honestly, you guys, I don't watch Fox Soul because I don't trust Fox. You know what I'm saying? So I see them putting out a lot of gay propaganda and stuff like that on Fox Soul, a lot of stereotypical things about Black people on Fox Soul. But because Cynthia was over there, I was like, oh, okay, I'm gonna watch it. Now, the reason that I've chosen to do a commentary on this conversation that the ladies had isn't necessarily because Cynthia was there. It was because it was like a flashback to my mixed race rabbit hole series, which is 4 videos. This will be the 4th video in that series. And it was the same situation. You had the hostess, which we're looking at here, who claims Black, but I don't know. I couldn't find her parents. I know that she's purporting herself to be Black. She's relatively ambiguous, in my opinion. And then you had 2 bona fide non-Black women there who were biracial, possibly quadroon, right? And then you had Cynthia and one other Black woman. You had no representation of dark skinned, completely unambiguous Black women. Um, you had, even for Cynthia and the other woman that were there, they represent one aspect of Blackness. We saw more of a spectrum of ambiguity than we saw of Blackness on this panel. And I just thought it was hilarious that a panel mostly of women who are not unambiguously Black would dare to assert what the Black community should or should not accept. I thought this was very interesting, and it gave me a flashback to that Aboriginal conversation where you had a room full of everybody from blonde hair and blue eyes to mulattoes and everything in between, having an argument about how Black they were when none of them on site were Black. It was interesting. You have to go back and watch those videos because that was just very, very interesting. So, with that said, I want to go through this because this was a very triggering conversation for me. Just because I think mixed people are a part of the Black community, right? They share Black blood. But to see the complete disrespect and insubordination that is repeatedly thrown at the Black community from, the majority of mixed people, because they were not raised any better, obviously, by their Black side, is problematic for me. And the complete pass that their non-Black side gets, even though Black people are the people who overwhelmingly, the majority of the time, embrace these mixed children. So anyway, I've cut out all the commercials and stuff. And I want to focus on what the mixed women have to say. I'm going to play Cynthia's introduction just so that we can hear the premise that she laid, because Cynthia was really the only person petitioning the cause for Black women. The young Black woman that was there seemed a little bit more uncomfortable with speaking her mind, even though she was aligned with sin. But I want to focus more on what the non-Black women were saying, because I think what they're saying is important. And I also want to talk about how we should approach these arguments, these conversations. They shouldn't be arguments, but these conversations where choosing to self-identify people in our community based on the fact that they genuinely are Black is treated like some sort of hateful behavior from Black people, specifically Black women most of the time, because I don't really hear mixed men trying to jump on this bandwagon. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but I don't see it as much. And then I also want to go and speak about, the Black Panther Party, because one of these mixed women was really leaning on the Black Panther Party and her white mother's association with Black Panthers to mean something. And I want to point out the flaw in that logic. Anyway, so let me add my other self so that you guys can hear my sound. Okay, so I'm switching devices here, you guys, so that you can hear the sound coming from my computer. Most of us have seen this, but still bear with me because it's hard to give a commentary without us going back through the video again.
Welcome to Business of Being Black with Tammy Mack. I'm Tammy Mack. So the one drop rule says if you have even one ancestor who is Black, you are Black. But why doesn't that principle play to any other ethnicity? Some people are saying now that the opposite should happen. That if you're not 100% Black, you are not Black. Ouch. I myself think my first question every show is, why should Black people care? Why should Black people care what biracial people are identified as? Cynthia?
So before Cynthia goes into it, let me just say this. First and foremost, but I want to make sure I took the right me out. Did I take the right me out? Can you guys still hear me? I just want to be sure. Oh yeah, you can. She has done this same show. This Tammy Mack lady has done this same exact show several times. This may be her third or fourth time. So for some reason, and this is why I'm doubting that she is actually Black. For some reason, this is a very interesting conversation for her to have. She's done this same show. She's done it with men. She's done it with women. She's done it with a mixed group. And now she's doing it with this group of ladies. I don't know why this is like a pet topic of hers, but it is, because when I was looking for this clip, I came up with a bunch of other Tammy Mack videos where she had discussed this exact topic. So first of all, why should Black people care what mixed people call themselves is a question that no mixed person should be answering. Because if you're not Black, you can't tell Black people or even speak for Black people as to why they should care. So I think even directing that question at a non-Black person is problematic, right? They could discuss it amongst themselves, but nobody can speak on the behalf of Black people as to why we should or should not choose to protect our racial identity or to exclude people from adopting racial identity. And I want to talk a little bit more about this because I'm going to use an example of a white woman, just like this young mixed girl's mother at the bottom, who had relationships with the Black Panther Party, and how she also convoluted her own whiteness, her own non-Blackness, because of the fact that Black people were so embracing. Anyway, but let's continue. And if it skips through, like I said, I pulled out all of the commercials and all of that. So in this version, there's none of that there. So if there's an abrupt start and stop, that's why. It's because I cut out all the fluffy parts.
Kick us off. Well, Black people should absolutely care, particularly Black women, because what we're seeing.
Oh, chocolate chunks, yes. It's not 100% Black. I don't know why Tammy's throwing that out there. Nobody's saying you have to be 100. Well, I have never heard anybody say that you have to be 100% Black. So I agree with you, chocolate chunks. It's not about being 100% Black, right? It's not about being 100% Black at all. It's about being the majority Black, right? Being, we're looking at above 50%, arguably 60% and upwards, right? Black. But she did say 100% Black. And I think we all can agree nobody's holding anybody to the expectation that they're 100% Black to be considered Black.
Is the biracial identity being Black, it affects Black women primarily. It does not really affect Black men. You don't have white women or Asian women or Hispanic women having to complain about people taking their identity. So this mostly affects Black women. And we should care because of our experiences. There's a certain experience that comes with being Black. And when you have biracial people identifying as Black, it creates a caste system within the Black community. We have an issue with colorism. So essentially the biracial people tend to present as the better version of a Black person, specifically a Black woman. And this affects whether we're getting jobs, whether we get acting, who representing identity, whether certain skin tones are being left out. So we should definitely care. This has a lot to do with not just our identity, but our experience in society. The reality is biracial is not Black, it's biracial. And I don't understand why there's such an issue with biracial people identifying as biracial. I think when we get into this discussion, to get to the core of it, we should also be asking, why aren't biracial people identifying as white when they have a white parent? Why should Black people care, Crystal?
So, like I said, that's probably, I'll play some of what Sin says, but I want to focus on the non-Black women's responses to what Sin said. So first of all, I would expand on this and say that a mixed person, and I don't want, some people are very weird where if you have 10% of something, if somebody says you're 2% Asian and you're 15% European, right? But the rest of you is Black, you have some people out there who'll say they're mixed. You're starting to have white people also get this kind of weird thinking where, I have, 5% African in me, or, 1% Jew or something, even though Jew's not a race. And then they'll say that they're mixed. So you're even starting to see this in other people, but it's dominant in the Black community, where if you have any admixture whatsoever, you can have 15% admixture that's non-Black. You have people saying that you're mixed, right? The reality is when you are the majority Black, right? For me, it's upwards of 55, 60%. So once you're on to the 60% Black mark, in my opinion, you are Black. I also think that physical ambiguity does have something to do with it. If you present as unambiguously Black, I would consider you Black. Now, this is very dicey because if you have a non-Black parent, but you present unambiguously Black, you do have a non-Black parent, but I've seen, it's very, very rare, but there is an Olympic athlete and her husband is non-Black. I don't know if he's mixed or like, one of those 25% Black people. I don't know if he's, quadroon or what he is, but their child looks like Blue Ivy. She looks like a little Black girl, right? Literally, if you saw her and you never saw her father, you would literally never know. I think her father probably is like quadroon or something like that. So arguably to me, when I look at a child like that, I would say that child is a Black child. If we put her in a room full of Black people that were unambiguous, none of us would know the difference from anything about her phenotype. And I would say if it's very likely if we had her genetically tested, because her father presents very octoroonish, quadroonish to me, that she would probably genetically be mostly Black. But those are very, very rare cases, right? So even without genetic testing, if you're presenting unambiguously Black, right, not questionably Black, then I would argue common sense will tell us that you're Black. Now, I want to go into this little young biracial lady down here, and I doubt she's biracial. She looks more quadroonish to me. Because she's lacking the undertone pigment, which happens when you reach like that quadroon status. You also see it over here in the woman that's dyed her hair blonde, the lawyer. I didn't bother to remember any of these women's names, but I want to get into how they are responding. I don't know if there are biracials in the chat, but honestly, nobody should. Do we not have mods in the chat? If I have mods in the chat, then you guys should be on top of your jobs. Let me see, because I'm not on YouTube, so I can't see how many mods I have in the chat. But mods, do your jobs. That's what you guys need to do. Anyway, let's go.
Honestly, Cynthia, I'm not gonna lie, a couple things you just said kind of strung a chord for me because, although my mother is a fair-skinned woman, she is not just white. She looks white, but she's very curvaceous, and you can tell that she's mixed. My mother is European, and she's also Bayesian, so she technically is a biracial woman herself. It makes it very tricky as far as identifying, with which culture, because I feel like we should be allowed to identify as all of it. We should be allowed to identify as Black if we want. My father's Nigerian. I have 8 siblings. I am literally the only one that is this fair complected, and it wasn't by choice. So it gets really tough, because it's like sometimes you.
And I think this is a little disingenuous. First of all, does she have 8 siblings or however many siblings she said she has by her mother? Or did her father spread his seed far and wide? Do you know what I mean? Now, I will say, I am a mother of mixed children. I have mixed children that are my same skin color, right? I have sons that are mixed who are the same color as me. And I have children, that are relatively lighter skin, lighter eyes. So it can come on a spectrum, right? I'm not saying that can't happen, but I don't think she has, what did she say? 6, 7, 8 siblings by the same mom. So she might have darker siblings, but I really want to know, are her darker siblings mixed as well? And what's considered darker? Because I have daughters that are both very light, and one of them is lighter than the other, but neither one of them is dark. Do you know what I mean? Like, arguably, you could look at one and say she's darker than the other, but you wouldn't look at either of them and call them dark. So I think sometimes this wordplay, this fair-skinned, darker-skinned, like that doesn't mean unambiguous. And I think it's very disingenuous when people do that. And I think that she is currently being disingenuous. Number one, she has not spoken about her mother having 8 or 9 kids. So I don't think all of these children have the same mother. Number 2, we don't know that all those children are mixed. Number 3, just because you're the lighter of other light-skinned children doesn't make them dark, which is why I think she called them darker and not dark-skinned.
or brown skinned or anything like that. I think she's wording her words very, very carefully. And you guys can vet that. I mean, Google is your friend. I'm 1,000% sure that's the vibe.
To be able to identify with either side. I mean, technically, if you want to bring it down to a percentage, I am more Black than white, but my complexion doesn't show that. So why should Black people care, Mona Lisa? Why should Black people care what biracial people identify as? I think Black people should care about what multicultural and biracial people identify as, because we're human too. You know, we want to take a place in this.
So listen to what she said. And I feel like she teetered on honesty to dishonesty. She said, I think Black people should care about what, you know, biracial or multiracial people identify as, because we are human too. So she already excludes herself out of Blackness. And she does that many times. So why this particular woman was not, what Mona Lisa was not on board with what Cynthia was saying, really baffled my mind. That really baffled my mind, because she comes out the gate automatically excluding herself and saying, I am something different, but we deserve to belong somewhere, right? And the place that most of them are choosing to belong, because they don't have other options, is the Black community, because the Black community is the most open and because they can choose that option. They don't have the ability to choose anything, most of them, right? They don't have that ability. So I just want to keep in mind that so first of all, Blackness is not based on skin color, but it is based on skin color. Do you know what I'm saying? We know that I have a sister that is lighter skinned than I am. She would be considered light skinned by most people. We definitely consider her light skinned in my family. But to say that Blackness is not based on skin color is highly ignorant. And that's why I timed you out. Blackness does have something to do with skin color. To pretend otherwise is to be ignorant. The first way that you identify a Black person is the fact that their skin is dark. So we're not going to have, you know, disingenuous, ridiculous conversations about, you know, how toxic it is to say Blackness is tied to skin color, when we know damn well that's the first thing that identifies a person as Black, is that they have dark skin. And we've seen this globally. This is not an American phenomenon. This is how Black-skinned Indians are identified. This is how Black people are identified in Fiji. This is how Black people are identified in Australia. This is how Black people are identified in the Latin American countries. So please, let's not start being remedial, you know, and again, that's why I timed you out. I want to time you out twice, because for us to sit here and say that it's toxic, why do you think they're using the word Black? We didn't start calling ourselves Black. They're using the word Black because it's literally referring to skin color. You know, so yes, skin color is an identifier of Blackness. To pretend that it's not is very, very ignorant. Very much ignorant.
As well, and we want to identify as being something just like everyone else wants to identify, but we don't want to be pigeonholed into making a choice. Like, my father is African American and my mother is Italian, and from the, you know, I'm from the 60s, born in the 60s, shall I say, and from that very moment.
And somebody said that Mona Lisa's hair is that color. Mona Lisa's hair is brown. It's brown. Her hair is brown. She has a Black father and an Italian mother, and we can clearly see from her roots that her hair may not be the 1B color, right? But her hair is brown. It's dark. She dyed her hair that color, and that's why her curls are all jacked up like that. Come on, y'all. I don't want us to sit here and be silly, you know, and like reach. Let's not reach.
In the 80s, and in the South, I had to make a choice. I had to make a choice when I went to the driver's license bureau on whether or not I was a white woman or a Black woman. And when I spoke to the woman at the counter, I said, hey, I'm mixed. You know, I'm biracial, and in those days we called ourselves half breeds. And I don't want to make a choice as to whether or not I'm black or white. I want to choose both. And she says, honey, if you got 1 ounce of black in you, baby, you just got to put black. So
I like how she did the impression of the woman's voice and made her sound like a black woman, meaning that black people were pigeonholing her into it. I mean, unless she's imitating a white woman. But I do think black people do pigeonhole people into picking black. A lot of black people will get offended if a mixed person doesn't pick black. They will be offended by that. I think mixed people should be taught that socially, society will consider you black most of the time, but that you are both things. You are white or Asian, you know, white Asian or whatever it is you are, and you are black. You are 2 things. But listen to the words that she's using, because she actually has a lot of disdain for this, right? Pigeonholed, right? What does it mean to be pigeonholed? Think about that. What does it mean to be pigeonholed? She says they are pigeonholed. She's pigeonholed into claiming black. That's exactly how she chose to refer it, as being pigeonholed into claiming black. She said that she wanted to choose something else, but she was told, you know, honey, like in a very black sounding voice, right? And she said she was speaking to a woman, so I don't think it's a stretch based on the impression she gave of how the woman talked, her calling it being pigeonholed, that she literally, and when she speaks about some of her disdain for black women later, I want us to remember this moment, that she speaks about a black woman from her impression pigeonholing her into choosing black. And she does not feel that she should have to do that. And I think this carries on into some of her attitude later in this. So All To Vlog said, I think she was doing a white Southern accent. Possibly. But in context of the rest of the conversation, possibly not, right? If you look at the breadth of her entire conversation, possibly not. Let's keep going.
And then she said, next. That's why she sounded like she was a black woman. She was a black woman. And I was like, how do you know it? Okay.
Oh no,
she clearly didn't want you on her side of the fence, that's for sure. Tony.
So she says that this woman was a white woman. Maybe you were right about her doing the accent, but the accent that she did was not a black accent.
Why should black people care?
Or I mean, was not a white accent.
Biracial people are identified.
Yeah, so I totally agree with a lot with what Cynthia was saying. I feel as if it gets problematic, especially for people who are fully black, not be able to get a seat at the table, I should say. A lot of opportunities are taken away from fully black women, primarily because they, especially when it comes to media, someone that is half black will get like more of an opportunity than a fully black person because they are deemed as someone that is considered more attractive, or, you know, because they have more European features or whatever non-black features that they have is considered better. So though I do feel as if mixed people should be
Mixit Site said, how can a person be both black and white? Or are they just a part of both? Knowing neither really knowing either experience, right? I think that's exactly what it is. I think they're not black, they're not white, they are a mixture of both, very literally, right? And they don't have a fully black experience. They don't have a fully white experience. Let's say if, you know, their whiteness is from the Asian countries, they don't have a fully Asian experience. They don't have a fully black experience. They have a unique experience as biracial people. Biracial people have a unique experience. Multiracial people, ambiguous people, right, have a unique experience that is their own, which is totally okay. It's totally okay. But it is their own experience. They don't know what it's like to be either thing because they are neither, and society treats them differently because of their ambiguity, because of their mixedness. They're treated differently in every community that they go to. And this is by biracial's own words. Remember when I read the Lewis Clark narrative, and that man was an enslaved man, but he was a whiter skinned enslaved man. And he talked about how they actually, those house slaves that almost looked white, had to grovel lower for white people. They had to grovel lower because they looked so white. White people constantly felt that they had to double down to keep them in their place, to let them know they weren't white, right? I mean, I've also spoken about, you know, an experience like that in our own home. I think even my daughter, she was discussing it, that she was playing with a little white girl, and, you know, they lived on our block, but our family had more. And this young white girl thought it was appropriate to tell my daughter, was just as light as she was, right, that, well, in the olden days, you would have been my slave, right? I think mixed people have a unique experience. I've said this many times on this channel, and one day I might really do it. I could write a book about mixed people's role in global society, because mixed people even have their own history of how they've been used to overthrow governments, have fought revolutions on behalf of their non-white side, or have been used to suppress their non-white side. Mixed people even have a unique history that is all their own, that is not acknowledged, because as she put it, everybody keeps trying to pigeonhole them into an experience and a category that is not theirs.
I do feel that it does take away from Black women when they are considered just fully Black, or just a Black person in general.
There's a lot to unpack here with what everyone has said. So I want to start with what Crystal said. Crystal said, listen, I have siblings who are much darker than me, and I'm the only one that's this fair skinned, and I didn't choose to be this color. I didn't choose to come out this way. But when you talk about it, Tony, you say that her being light-skinned, a light-skinned Black girl, takes away opportunity from those who are 100% Black in tone, I should say, who are not biracial, I want to say. But how is that Crystal's fault? It seems like you might be suggesting that it's America's fault, because if they give her an opportunity because she's prettier by what the system says is prettier, she has access to more jobs, and so she should identify as white so that she can't be a minority, and minorities are still allowed to have those jobs. Those spaces are still open. Is that kind of what you're suggesting, Tony, or am I way off base?
No, I'm more so suggesting that I feel that biracial people should be able to identify as biracial versus them just having the label as I am a Black person, because sometimes they are forced to select that. I honestly...
AL2 Vlog said, what about mixed people with white and Asian, Indian and Chinese? Okay, so I think it depends, because Asian, Chinese, Indian, those things are not races, right? So I think if you have a child that is European white mixed with Indian white, they will have a white experience. But if you have a child that is European white mixed with Black Indian, because some of those Black Indians are darker than many of us American Black people, you know, some of them are pitch black dark, then that child is going to have a mixed experience. So it depends, right? If you have a more white presenting Asian person, if you have, because you only used Asian as your example, right? If you have a white Latino person and you mix that with white, their child is going to just look white. You know, that's what they're going to look like. Now, the thing is, what I've learned is that white people can really tell their own, because there are Asian people that just look plain white to me. Like their genes have been so washed out that they simply look white. But white people can tell that they're not fully white. And they will not call them white. You know what I'm saying? They simply won't do that. But I think that when you're talking about mixing two people that look white together and what their child deals with, I think it depends on the phenotype of their child. We are concerned with Black people though, because when you mix an Indian person who's white or a Black Indian person and you mix a white person with that child is just considered mixed. If you notice it. Lauren Chen, right here on YouTube, is an excellent example. She doesn't consider herself Chinese. She has a white mother, a Chinese father. She does not consider herself Chinese. She considers herself mixed. See, the only time that I have noticed mixed children fully adopting the race of one of their parents is when the parent is Black. It only happens when they have a Black parent. For all other variations of mixed people, right, they say that they're mixed. And let's also state that those other variations are far less numerous. There are way more, there are way more children that are mixed with Black than other types of mixed children. Also, the phenotype changes most greatly when you mix with Black. When you have two white presenting people that mix, unless there's something extreme about their phenotype, like extremely slanted eyes, right? Or something like that holds strong, those children come out looking white because you're just mixing two varieties of white people, right? Two continental varieties of white people. It's the same as if we mix, a Nigerian person with somebody that looks like me. You're just mixing two varieties of Black people, two phenotypes of Blackness, right? There's a lot of phenotypes of Blackness where we have Black skin, but our facial features are different. Our hair textures are different. But when you mix us together, we don't confuse that you've mixed two Black people together. Somehow we don't do the same thing when people are white. We think that when two white people mix, it's not just mixing two varieties of white together. I think that's very interesting how we internalize that. But also, what is it our concern what mixed people who aren't mixed with Black do? That doesn't have anything to do with our community, right? That's something for those communities to deal with. Those are not our children. Those people don't carry our bloodline, so we can't be concerned. Their parents' people need to be concerned with that.
That people should identify with what they most closely identify with, and same with Crystal saying that she has other siblings that are darker, and they may just want to say, hey, I'm a Black person. I feel like you should identify with whichever component you feel that you closely feel connected to. But in a lot of references in media, and it's not any biracial person's fault and it's not a Black person's fault, but in media and what is displayed on, whether that's movies, television shows, social media, all of that, the person that's mostly shown are people that are mixed, and they are labeled as Black people, and they're like, hey, well, we gave Black people a role, but it's like, no, that's not a fully Black person. And that's more so goes into colorism, I feel, more so than someone being biracial or someone being a Black person.
Cynthia, you said Black people have an experience of their own. It's a culture for the most part. And I've talked about this on my show before. And some people are saying, especially in today's world, there are Black people who don't have the same experience, who aren't bound by the same cultural experiences. And so how do you address that?
Well, here's the thing, cultural experience.
Okay, so Bree Bree's being funny, but actually, Bree Bree, you actually are making the point. Bree Bree said, I feel connected to billionaires, but my bank feels differently. Listen, it's kind of the same thing, right? Because billionaires have money and you have money, right? You both have money, but they have billions of dollars and you don't. And that's the same thing with Blackness, right? You have a little Black in you. I have some Black in me, but the degrees of Blackness are different. So actually your billionaire thing is actually a really good example. Like, we all have money, but we're not all billionaires. You can have Black ancestry and I can have Black ancestry, but if I'm 80% Black and you're 30% Black, clearly we're not the same. You know, having $1 doesn't make you a billionaire. Having $1,000 doesn't make you a billionaire. So if Blackness was the equivalent of being a billionaire, then somebody that has $5,000, yeah, you have some money and I have some money, right? But we are not the same. So actually, I think, you know, your comment ties directly into the argument. If we thought about it that way, nobody would be arguing about anything. We would not be arguing that money equals billionaire status, no more than we would argue that African-American heritage makes you Black, or Black, you know, any sort of Afro descent automatically makes you Black.
Are important, but your actual racial makeup is important as well. And so myself, for example, I am a Black woman, but I grew up in a white suburb. So, I mean, technically I can say I didn't experience, for a lot of my life, I didn't experience what other Black people who grew up in different areas may have experienced, but I'm still a Black woman. I'm still going to own my identity. I'm just not sure why it's an issue for biracial people to identify as biracial. That's what I'm having the confusion with, because, you know, and it's what Tony said, where they're getting certain privileges based on their proximity to whiteness, but their identity is Black. And we already know how much Black women have had to struggle in this country for accomplishments, for recognition, for praise that we still don't get. So to have non-Black people move into that space, because there are no parameters on it. You have Rachel Dolezal saying that she's Black. You'll have full-on white people saying that they're Black for the purposes of getting benefits that may come with it, but they have no connection to it. And we have to think about the parents of the biracial person. Most biracial people have a white mother and a Black father. They have a high rate of single mothers. So you have essentially Black women having their minds molded by white women.
It was trifling they put up that picture. It's like they knew Sin was going to make the argument and had a picture prepared. That had me on the floor the first time I saw it.
Woman isn't going to give a Black identity. So most of the time, like, they don't relate to Black women. They're lumped in the category of Blackness, but they understand it's their proximity to whiteness that they can actually essentially weaponize against actual Black people.
How can you say that, Cynthia, when your proximity to whiteness is more than the average Black woman as well? How do you hold those same Black experiences?
And that's what, and I think it's interesting. Look, this was disingenuous to me, because later on the host, Tammy, tries to connect herself to Blackness by her hair texture. Kind of similarly how the little, you know, young girl at the bottom tried to connect her mom to Blackness by saying she was curvy. Even though we know there are whole groups, the Maasai tribe is an excellent idea of black people who are not curvy at all. They're just tall and thin. There's a YouTuber who's African, I Am Aloho. She is not curvy at all. She's tall and she's thin. So you have fully Black people who are not curvy, right? Curviness does not equal Blackness, right? Blackness equals Blackness, not curviness, not curly hair. None of that equals Blackness. Being Black, your skin being Black equals Blackness. But what's interesting is that the host, Tammy, said that she had a Black experience because of her hair texture, right? But Cynthia, who is unambiguously Black in skin color, like, nobody's confusing Sin with being not Black. Nobody's gonna look at Sin and be like, she's ambiguous. Do you know what I mean? Cynthia has a phenotype that we can see on the continent of Africa. Cynthia has a phenotype that I have personally seen in many Black women. So does the young lady on the other side. She has a phenotype that is commonly seen amongst Black people. Unambiguous. You don't look at them and think anything other than that's a pretty Black girl. So for her to say that Sin's genetic makeup might lend to her not having a Black experience, no. Now, will Cynthia or even the other young lady that's up there have a different experience than a dark-skinned woman with 4C hair and you know, very wide nose, very wide lips, right? More of a Congolese feature. I don't even want to say West African features because all West Africans don't have that look. You know, some West Africans actually look, believe it or not, a lot like Sin, you know, with the more elongated noses, the more oval faces, you know, things like that. So we have some YouTubers, you guys can probably name them, that are West African that have that more oval look to their face, more elongated nose, right? The fuller lips. So, but the thing that they don't have is they don't have light skin. They have dark skin, right? They're dark skinned people. Again, blackness is being black. The state of blackness is the most unambiguous thing about us, which is our skin color. So it's just interesting. She gets to connect to black based on hair type, but then tries to claim that Sin, who walks around life never not being considered anything but black on sight, because she has an admixture that's common. You know, all American blacks, almost, not all of us, but most of us have, you know, somewhere in the area of 10, 15% to 25% Caucasian blood in us. But nobody's looking at us and going, oh, that's not a black person. that's an ambiguous person. Oh, let me squint and see what that person is. That's not happening.
Not though. The average makeup of a black person in this country, because of, we know the history, is about 25% white. Mine is about 19. So I actually don't have the average makeup. We can even still say I have the average makeup. Oh, that's fine. But when I present very differently than a biracial person, I am obviously very aesthetically black. It is clear that I have two black parents, which your average biracial person is not. They carry, especially biracial people.
Oh, sorry. But why did she, hold on, I lost my place. But why did she throw up the picture of this chick right here? This girl is unambiguously black. And she threw up that picture on purpose because this isn't necessarily the phenotype that Cynthia has, right? This young lady's phenotype is closer to the other young woman on the panel. But arguably, there are lots of black people that don't look like her either. She still has fine features, as some people would call them. She has fine features, but she has kinky hair. And I guarantee you this young lady is still probably about 15% white. This is the average look. This is why African people and us black people in America, we can tell a Latin black a lot of the time. We can tell an African black from an American black. It's that admixture. Even our black in the United States looks very different from many presentations of blackness on the motherland. Right? Heck, Australian black, despite their hair texture, comes off way more black than us phenotypically. With the depth of their skin, their facial angles, all of those things, right? But why did she have all the pictures? It's like, did she hold up pictures for anybody else? It's like she had a million pictures ready for Cynthia. Like she knew that she was going to make that comment, and she was like, let's get a black girl with with some 4B hair up there and toss that up. I just thought that was hilarious, as if that made a point. When we know that there are black people that present like Sin. That does not make sense.
Average makeup, we can even still.
Oh, you know who presents very similar to Cynthia? Same type of facial features, that elongated nose, the fuller lips, and the oval face, Jackie Aina. Now, Jackie Aina and Sin aren't the same exact color. I don't think they're too many shades off, but I'm talking about their facial features, the elongated nose, the more oval face, the full lips. Honestly, Jackie Aina has very similar features to Sin. So that's why she could have held up a black woman that looks like that, right? The phenotypes vary, but I just think it's funny. She had a picture to hold up for so much of what Sin said, but she wasn't holding up pictures for anybody else that I can recall.
I have the average makeup. Oh, that's fine. But when I present very differently than a biracial person, I am obviously very aesthetically Black. It is clear that I have two Black parents, which your average biracial person is not. They carry, especially given the fact that when the creation of a biracial person is happening, you have a Black person who is partly white too. So that Black person's white genetics is going into it as well as the white person. So what ends up happening
we'll get to see what Crystal has to say when we return. We've got to take a quick break, Cynthia G. Didn't mean to cut you off. We'll be right back on the business of being Black to see how Crystal feels about all of this.
So I'll say this, the host has a long nose, but actually when I was trying to figure out if Tammy Mack was really Black or not, I don't think she looks like Cynthia. Like me having researched, like what does she normally talk about, and just trying to figure out, like, is she also mixed as well? But I definitely can see what you're saying as far as the elongated nose, at least. You know what I'm saying? However, I think in reality, the host is more ambiguous, and many of us might question if she was mixed, but nobody's looking at Cynthia and questioning if Cynthia is mixed.
Your emotions should be swelling up over there. Swelling! Because you ain't Black.
they are.
Welcome back to the business of being Black with Tammy Mack. I'm Tammy Mack, and the business of being Black today is defining the ethnicity of biracial people. Please welcome content creator Tony Brian, criminal justice activist Mona Lisa Johnson, NAACP Image Award nominated actress Crystal Jasmine, and influencer and YouTuber Cynthia G. Crystal, a lot said here about you being able to identify yourself as biracial. What is your preference? Would you prefer to be identified as Black, white, or biracial?
You know, I had to take some deep breaths during that break. I'm literally sweating over here from everything that was said. I was doing my best to remain professional and not just interject myself. It's me personally, I feel forced to say.
I was saying that I blame the NAACP for this, y'all. So she's an NAACP Image Award winner, and the NAACP, oh gosh, don't get me started. So I was just at an NAACP fundraising dinner. And when I was at this NAACP fundraising dinner, and this is something I will say, in areas that are, so first of all, most of the people at the fundraising dinner were not Black. Let's just start there. In fact, one of the women who came up to comment, one of the Black women that came up to comment, she was like, it's nice to see so many white people in the room, because to be honest, without you, we probably wouldn't be here. And everybody laughed, but it was like what we were all thinking internally, which is that the NAACP collects a lot of white money. And so I was at an NAACP event where everybody was damn near white. Even at our table, there were, it was me, Mr., we were Black, and then there was a mixed girl who was at the table with us. Very sweet, young woman. And one of the leaders of the local chapter was a boy with a white mother, who, for all intensive purposes, he was the darker of his siblings, which means that if he had no hair, he could pass for white. But because his hair was very kinky, he could not pass for white. And in all of the time of his educational history, he only had one Black person at any of his schools, and it was a Black woman. And he was giving he was saying how impactful it was for him to have seen himself reflected in that Black woman. Now, this is a boy that came from a whole white woman, right? He came out of a white woman's womb. But in the area that they are in, which is a predominantly white area, they are considered Black. They are considered Black. Now, I don't think this is this little confused girl, but I blame the NAACP. I was saying that over on Cynthia's, that I wasn't able to be there for the conversation on Cynthia's until the very end. But I was saying I blame the NAACP. That's why I'm not for pushing biracials completely out of the Black community. The young lady that was sitting at the table with us, that Mr. Among having a mentoring agency and managing a rites of passage for the Black students in our county, he also is a college professor, right? He teaches at the college university level. And the young woman that was sitting with us was telling me that her whole life she went to a Japanese immersion school. Her mother is an ambiguous mixed woman as well. I don't know how she produced this young lady, but she's a fair-skinned child, but she has 4C hair. And she talked about how the first time she had a Black teacher was when she reached university and Mr. was the person teaching her. And she never had a Black teacher before that. There are mixed people like them, and I want to acknowledge that, who grow up in predominantly white areas, who are treated like Black people. Now, are they treated as badly as the unambiguous Black people in their areas? Absolutely not. Those unambiguous Blacks are treated much, much, much worse. But if we hold a function, an NAACP event, if we were to gather up all the so-called Black children in some of these areas that we go into to support the Black communities, what we get are mostly mixed kids. Those types of children, like the young man that gave that speech, the young woman I was sitting next to who talked about, students throwing stuff in her hair and then her getting in trouble because she was a distraction to the class, even though they were throwing stuff in her hair. Right? Those type of mixed people are, unlike these two women on the panel, they are the type that I could see giving pushback on being told that they're not Black. But let me tell you something, even talking to her, I know for a fact that she understands that her Black is different than our Black. I don't know that that little boy on the stage that came from a white mom comprehended that he's literally not Black at all. I think he thinks he's Black, even though his mom is a whole white woman. I think it is difficult. Now, mind you, neither of these young people have Black mothers, right? I think it's difficult for mixed people who grow up in those environments because there are some very, very homogenous parts of the United States where you do have mixed children who are the Black people of their area because everybody's white. I could see a genuine pushback and hurt from people like that in these conversations. However, I think because they are so ostracized, because of the Black part of them, those are the same types of mixed people that would respect a delineation being made because they would have witnessed those unambiguous Black people being treated even worse than them. Whereas you have mixed people who are privileged to grow up in more diverse areas who mostly experience the benefits of being mixed versus the drawbacks of being mixed. So I want to acknowledge that there are two mixed race experiences, right? There's the I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area mixed race experience, and there's the, I grew up in the middle of, Vermont mixed race experience. You know what I'm saying? Those are going to produce two different types of mixed people. Two mixed people that are having children are going to have a mixed child. What else are they going to have? They're both mixed.
Racial a lot of the times, I personally like to identify as Black, and I have an amazing reason. I feel like, Cynthia, from her personal experiences, might be on base, but from, I feel like it is a huge generalization for a lot of biracial people. Me personally, my father's Nigerian. Like I said, he is not mixed with white in any way, shape, or form. I grew up celebrating Kwanzaa. He has African names for all of me and my siblings.
Why would she celebrate Kwanzaa if her father is Nigerian? That doesn't even make sense. He's not American. First of all, Kwanzaa was made up, okay? Back, in the 70s? When did Kwanzaa get made up? Was it the 70s? Why would a Nigerian man celebrate Kwanzaa? Does he not have a Nigerian heritage to celebrate? Wasn't Kwanzaa something that was made for African Americans because we didn't have anything to celebrate? and somebody just piece made a holiday to give us something that was culturally ours? So why would her Nigerian father not be celebrating Nigerian heritage with her? Why would he celebrate Kwanzaa with her? And then I'm so confused. And then he has African names for all of them, but she's calling herself Crystal. She's so Black and she's so proud of this. But her Kwanzaa celebrating Nigerian father, who gave her an African name, that's not the name that she chose.
Just like Tandy Newton chose not to use her African name. You know what I mean? Like, it's all blackety black until it's your name. I'm still trying to understand why the Nigerian father is celebrating Kwanzaa. Like, where do they do that at? Even Americans, I don't even celebrate Kwanzaa. Now, I know some really, really like blackified people, mister, who will celebrate Kwanzaa. You know what I mean? They will celebrate. These will be the same ones that are trying to make sense out of Ebonics. Like, you know what I'm saying? It happens. People celebrate it. But I'm just saying, we barely celebrate that ish. A whole Nigerian man celebrating Kwanzaa. Crystal strikes me as a liar. And I think somebody was looking, hold on, let me pull the video back up. I think somebody was looking into Crystal, and on her was it you, Sin? I feel like Cynthia did it while she was live, and on her actor profile on what IMBD or whatever it's called, on that profile, it says that she was raised by a single mom. So it says she was raised by a single mom. So that doesn't make sense. It says she was raised by her white single mother. It doesn't say anything about Kwanzaa, or you know what I'm saying? I just don't. Maybe you guys know some Africans that celebrate Kwanzaa. Maybe you guys know something I don't know, and you know of some African people that are out here in the world celebrating Kwanzaa. And I'm confused. I could be the one with the problem. Hold on, let's get back to the video.
Oh, wait, you guys couldn't hear it. Oh, I'm so sorry. Hold on.
Forced to say biracial a lot of the times. You know, I personally like to identify as Black, and I have an amazing reason. Like, I feel like, you know, Cynthia, from her personal experiences, might be on base, but from, you know, I feel like it is a huge generalization for a lot of biracial people. You know, me personally, my father's Nigerian. Like I said, he is not mixed with white in any way, shape, or form. I grew grew up celebrating Kwanzaa. He has African names for all of me and my siblings. You know, so I grew up celebrating those types of, you know, cultural differences. My mother, she may be biracial and seen as white in society.
And this is why I think she's lying, because if she grew up around her Nigerian father, then she knows that Kwanzaa is not a Nigerian cultural difference. Nigerians don't celebrate Kwanzaa. She's just literally pulling stuff out of the side of her face.
But she herself was raised by my grandfather that's a Black Panther. So to say that, you know, white people or white women are, you know, subjecting the Black children to white ideals is not always true.
So she's offended on behalf of her mother. She's offended on behalf of her mother. And that brings me, I want to just take a short break, you guys, just indulge me. That brings me to this white woman in a Black Panther world and why this young woman might be confused. Her mother might have wrote this article. Hold on. Her mother might have been the one to write this article. It could have been her. Okay, look at this. I'm a white woman who dated a Black Panther. I could have been Rachel Dolezal. Okay? I just want us to take a moment real quick.
Okay. I just want us to look at this just real quick. In 2006, I joined. No, so this is a white woman who dated a Black Panther and had an identity crisis. And I'm thinking maybe her white mom had an identity crisis, and that's why this young woman is confused. It says in 2006, I joined a circle of Black Panthers and other minority activists. I went to weekly meetings in neighborhoods that white people avoided, South Bronx, Flatbush, and Bedford. I accessorized with headscarves and painted wooden bangles. I had internal monologues about our struggle and protested against police brutality as if I myself were a victim of racial profiling. I was 19, white, and experiencing a full-blown identity crisis, not unlike the one that probably jump-started Dolezal's downward spiral into delusion. Like her, I empathize with marginalized groups, but I also do so with the benefit of a Jew-fro. She's Jewish. I look more like Rachel Dolezal in her after pictures, except I was born this way. I have a naturally dark and kinky fro. This is why I said hair texture is not a measure of Blackness. There's a Jewish woman on YouTube who Black people kept trying to tell her she was Black. And this woman is like, I have taken a genetic test. I'm just Jewish. And I was in the comment section like, other people have afros. Like other people have curly hair that defies gravity. That's not an exclusively Black thing. The Blackest thing about you is your skin, right? Aboriginal people have straight hair. You know what I mean? All Black people don't have afros. There are Black people blacker than you with fully straight hair, but they're still Black. But anyway, she had a Jew afro, right? She said she has skin that is a medium tan at Sephora and the kind of body proportions Sir Mix-a-Lot paid tribute to in 1992. That's why I said a curvy body is not Black. Hair is not Black. A curvy body is not Black. All Black people don't have curves. The continent of Africa will show you there's a ton of Black people who are just thin and not shaped like anything. A big booty is not Black. An afro is not Black. Carrot Top, what is it, that weird, he got all the plastic surgery, Carrot Top, is he a comedian or something? He has an afro. He's not Black. You know what I mean? Lots of non-Black people have big boobs and big butts. They're not Black. A big butt doesn't make you Black. But notice, that's the first thing she went to. I'm a whole white woman, but I have a Jew fro. And I have a body like Sir Mix-a-Lot talked about. Ergo, now I can relate to Blackness. But nobody is discriminating. Look, the discrimination comes with the skin color. Nevertheless, she goes on to say, as a teenager, I played into that perception. I lived in Harlem. I dated a Black Panther. I hung a poster of Bob Marley smoking a joint in my studio apartment, but in reality, not only had I rarely faced discrimination, I often benefited from being what a Beverly Hills casting agent called ethnically white, someone whom everyone feels comfortable with. I just wanted to I remember I'm doing this in the context of that young woman claiming, what's her name, Crystal Jasmine, talking about her mom being raised by a Black Panther member, as if that was some evidence of her Blackness. I wanted to talk about another white woman who hung out with Black Panthers and how she got confused, and how a confused white woman clearly raised a confused biracial child, right? Anyway, let's keep going. Let's keep going. She goes on to say, I never told people I was Black, but I felt like I was something other than white. Isn't that what Crystal's telling us about her mom? She's something other than white. She may not be Black, but she's something other than white. And I identified with the Black Panther cause as if it were my own. In our activist group, other white women, because the Black Panthers just had white women running up and through there, apparently, the kind who looked like Dolezal in her before pictures had a hard time integrating. They were often called out for overstepping their boundaries as allies, for their use of the word we and our people. One time during a meeting in which we discussed racial inequality, a white member of the Black Panthers, I just want to be clear on what we're talking about, interjected, "Isn't it all really economic inequality?" She went on to talk about the problems she was facing as a low-income white American. Other members' brows furrowed, and my boyfriend shot a glance my way, rolling his eyes like, here we go again. Her Black Panther boyfriend, right? Her Black male Black Panther boyfriend. I just want to be clear on what we're talking about here. I never faced this kind of critique because she had a big booty and a Jew fro. Nobody ever treated her that way, is what she's saying. Let's be clear on what this woman is saying. At my very first meeting, I was welcomed into an intimate woman's chat in the kitchen, the group's symbolic inner circle. So Black women then embrace this white woman. Okay, let's be clear on what's happening. She's hanging out with Black Panthers. She's a white woman with a big booty. She's got a Jew fro because she's Jewish, so she's got a little Jew fro. And Black men weren't calling her out, and then Black women brought her into the inner kitchen circle to hang out with them, right? They offered me advice on how to lock my hair, and they referred me to their hairdressers. Black women did this. Black women were telling her how she could lock her hair up and offering her a hairdresser to deal with her Jew fro because an afro makes you Black, right? I was able to build friendships with Black and Hispanic members that outlasted the 8-month stint during which I was active in the group. After my boyfriend and I broke up, I left the group. They invited me to spoken word poetry slams and to a baby shower where I ate Jamaican jerk chicken. Y'all, I cannot stand this article. I can't stand it. Poetry slams and jerk chicken, okay? Apparently, poetry slams and jerk chicken make you Black. Afros, big booties, jerk chicken, poetry slams, Black Panther Party, that makes you Black. That's why Crystal is confused, because Black people have told people that eating jerk chicken or putting hot sauce in your bag is a sign of Blackness. I was warmly introduced to sisters, brothers, and a grandfather who quickly cracked me a beer and gave me a bear hug. She's at the cookout, y'all. When another white member approached the grandfather, he just shook his hand and nodded hello. But because she had a big booty and an afro, they gave her a hug. There were times when I worried that their kindness came with the presumption that I was Black, and I started inserting "I am Jewish" randomly into conversations. But in practice, I continued to internalize a culture and experience that weren't mine. I love that my passable appearance afforded me an insider status. Hear it. I love that my passable appearance afforded me an insider status. I can't help how my appearance makes people feel about me, but it doesn't give me a license to appropriate a culture and confuse its struggle for my own. That's where I and Dolezal crossed the line, regardless of any work we did to promote the causes of the Black community. My moment of self-awareness, and that's why I said I blame the NAACP, because where was Dolezal working? The NAACP. Who gave Crystal an image award? The NAACP. The NAACP is very problematic. My moment of self-awareness came during one of our protests against police brutality. I had written a poem about how poorly the issue was being covered by the news. It was dry and stilted, lacking the power and emotionality of the art created by our other members. The poem was distant because I had never been stopped nor frisked by the police. I told my boyfriend that I was disappointed by my writing. She's writing about Black stuff now. It's distant because you're not pretending to be anything other than being on the outside of the issue. So he coddles her, right? She goes on to say, I don't know if he knew how much I needed to hear that, but it stopped my identity crisis in its track before I reached anything near Dolezal levels of delusion. Before my junior year of college, I was favoring the librarian with a Jew fro look over my former Jamaican-inspired swagger. Hear it. She went to look more Jewish and stopped her Jamaican-inspired swagger. But my period of confusion allows me to have some empathy for Dolezal, even if I lack sympathy for her lies. I don't have the credentials to analyze her, but I do have the grounds to analyze myself. Part of the reason I sought entrance into a community fighting for the rights of people other than my own is because of the way I was raised. Then she blames it on the Holocaust, that she was pretending to be Black, okay? So she said, suffice it to say, I didn't grow up thinking it was weird to be an activist for Black rights or that it was a challenge to find a multiracial environment. One of the gifts of ethnic ambiguity is that I have been able to effortlessly, I can't say it, form friendships that exist outside of racial boundaries and tensions, one of her gifts of racial ambiguity, and become intimate with other cultures. The gift of ambiguity is that you can flex in and out of various cultures. So let's go back to the video. Because the only thing that I'm trying to prove here is she's rambling on about her big-bootied white mother who was raised by a Black Panther. And that is why Crystal is confused. She's confused because just like this other big-bootied white woman with a Jew fro, right? Just like Crystal's big-bootied white mother, she's no different than that woman that was dating Black Panthers and getting advice on locking her hair and comparing herself to a Sir Mix-a-Lot video and eating jerk chicken and wearing head wraps, right? That is the image that Crystal is painting of her mother. You know, the head wrap wearing jerk chicken eating big bootied white girl who thinks because she's in the space with Black people who don't reject her, somehow that means that she's not Black, but she's not white. So a white woman with an identity crisis raised this girl, and that's why this girl is coming off confused. Anyway, let's get back to the clip.
Was very much raised as a Black woman herself. Like, people hear my mom talk and they're like, where are you from? What are you mixed with? Because
the way people talk does not make them Black. This is why these people think they're Black. Curly hair doesn't make you Black. Jerk chicken doesn't make you Black. A love of hot sauce doesn't make you Black. A soulful voice doesn't make you Black. Okay? Sounding a little soulful doesn't make you Black. That's why the Catch Me Outside girl almost got slapped. Everybody says John B sings like a Black dude. Who? Christina Aguilera has a soul. That doesn't make you Black. This skin, this dark chocolate skin, when I lay my arm on my wooden table, me and the wood from this tree are the same color. That is what makes you Black. Nothing else. But we've made people think that big booties, curly hair, afros, hot sauce, jerk chicken, and hanging out with Black Panthers all of a sudden makes them Black. A head wrap does not make you Black. But this is what we've taught people. And that's why she's sitting up here making all these arguments about everything that has nothing to do with being Black as a reason why her mother was raised as a Black woman. Because apparently all you need is a head wrap, a relationship with a Black Panther, and a big booty to be a Black woman. This girl doesn't even understand how disrespectful she is. She does not understand how disrespectful she is. There are Black women out here who have never eaten jerk chicken, never wore a head wrap, and have flat butts, and they are Black women. So for her to equate proximity to the Black Panther Party and a booty and the way somebody talks as being raised as a Black woman, this lets her know she doesn't even know what being a Black woman is. She doesn't know. She might as well have said she loves chitlins. She loves chitlins. You know what I mean? Down in that peach cobbler and those pig's feet at every single, you know what I'm saying? It's like, how insulting. But because she doesn't know better, because she clearly has not had a Black experience, she doesn't know how insulting it is to Black people, to Black women, for a whole white woman to be said to be raised as a Black woman simply because she was around Black Panthers and has a booty. And that's how we know that Crystal is not Black. Not because of her privilege, because of her skin color. I don't care if people like Crystal or light-skinned girls or anybody better than us or think they're more attractive because they're, you know, proximity to whiteness. It's because you don't even know what it is to be a Black woman. It's because generations of hearing Black people say that another Black person talks white actually have Crystal out here lost in the sauce thinking that because her mother talks a little soulful, she's a Black woman. Well, I don't have the most soulful voice, but I'm a Black woman because the way you talk does not make you Black. See, I would never personally raise a mixed child that would make a stupid argument like that. Because if you ask one of my mixed children what makes a woman Black, what makes a person Black, she's going to point at their skin. That is what makes them Black. That dark skin that will never be confused with anything is the essence of Blackness. Not the way that you talk. But carry on. Crystal's going to tell us all about it. She grew up around Black Panthers. She has a big booty. The way she talks isn't like a white woman. She was raised as a Black woman because that's all. So I guess all of us Black women with flat butts, who don't talk soulfully, who didn't grow up around Black Panthers, I guess we're not Black because clearly Crystal's mom got the Black female experience.
There's nothing white about her except for the tone of her skin. Barely, you know?
She said there's nothing white about her except for the tone of her skin. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, that's what makes you white. Little do you know. The tone of one's skin is the defining factor between Blackness and whiteness. How are you going to dismiss the very thing that's been discriminated against? How are you going to dismiss the very thing that's had so many Black people slaughtered throughout the earth? except for the tone of her skin, yeah, that's the thing that matters most. That's the thing that makes people peg us as Black. We could all stick our arm in a circle and nobody ever see our booties or our faces or hear us talk. And guess who they're going to pick out Black people by? If we all stuck our arms in a huddle and they couldn't see anything else about us, how would they identify the Black people? You guys tell me. How would they identify us? Everything about her was Black except the tone of her skin? What? What does that even mean? Everything about her was Black except the tone of her skin. Where do they do that at? It's so disrespectful. And this is why she's not Black. Because the one thing Black people do know for a fact is it's the tone of our skin that marks our Blackness, and it's the tone of our skin that is discriminated against. That is Blackness.
So to say that, me being biracial, having a white mom means that I have these white ideals and that my father wasn't present or didn't raise us with any other, ideas as far as our Black history is very upsetting, and it's like, I have full-blood siblings that are much darker than me. We were raised exactly the same. Why do they get to identify as Black and I don't?
What do you identify as?
I identify as Black.
She identifies as Black. But this is also the same woman that said the only thing that wasn't Black about her mother was her skin. She has a big booty and a soulful voice. And a Black Panther uncle. And so the only thing Black about her mom was the only thing not Black about her mom was her skin. And this is the woman that identifies as Black. Okay.
So, how do you feel? Jump in here.
Well, I'm feeling.
Ooh, I'm so glad you said that. I'm so glad you said that. Dark Femme said, but is representing biracials. Exactly. Because as a Black woman, we could get into, and that's what I was saying over on Sims the other day, we could get into a whole fight about colorism, hair texture, whatever the case is. But at the end of the day, I'm never going to say that I'm not Black. I'm not going to be representing non-Blackness. She's up there speaking on behalf of biracial people, but she's a Black woman. She's speaking from the perspective of a biracial person, but you consider yourself Black. When you're a Black woman, you're a Black woman all the time. You don't opt in and out. At the beginning of this live, somebody told me I was mixed. You didn't see me jumping on it. Well, because it's absurd. I know that I'm Black. Black women don't hop in and out of Blackness. We're Black all the time. All the time. Whatever division we have amongst Black women, the one thing we will be amongst our division is Black and female. But she doesn't know better because she's not a Black woman.
I'm sweating over here. I don't even know why. When I start talking about this whole subject, it makes me really filled with anxiety because, ever since I was younger, I've never been Black enough. I've never been white enough. And as I grew older and I started working in the television field and in the field of social justice, I've never been anything other than they don't know what I am. They're always questioning, is she Black? Is she white? What difference does it make? What difference does it make? That's number one. Number two, when I was younger, I was raised in a predominantly Black neighborhood. My dad and mother stayed together until I was about 8 years old. And then my dad married a Black woman. And so therefore she pretty much raised us and kind of put all the stuff in us. And I really didn't get to know any part of my white family. They disowned us because they said, and I will quote this, I will have nothing to do with raising nigger children.
Okay, let's listen to it. Now, remember, she said this. She doesn't even know her white family. Her mother is white, right? Her mom is white. She came out of the womb of a white woman. She passed the vagina of a white woman. Her father left her mother at the age of 8 and went and married a Black woman. And that Black woman, by her own words, remember this, by her own words, that Black woman married to her father embraced her. So a woman that's not even her blood embraced her. This is a woman that grew up in a fully Black community around Black people. She doesn't know her white family because they don't want anything to do with her whatsoever. I want you guys to remember this as she keeps talking.
That's what my grandmother and my grandfather told my mother, who's no longer here on the earth, that they would have nothing to do with us. And so we knew nothing about our white side of our family. But does that mean that I didn't experience it growing up? No, it doesn't mean that, because I've always been around all types of people all of my life. But my true experience and the way I grew up was 100% Black. And how do I identify is I am a Black woman. Just because my skin does not denote that. Girl, you better look at my hair, okay? my hair is better now these days that we have all these great products, that are designed for multicultural women and for mixed women.
Okay, so hold on. Roanne Red said, wondering about people who have vitiligo and albinism. I don't think that, we can't worry about people who have vitiligo and albinism. They have an illness. I don't think, it's kind of like, and I'm not saying that you're trying to do this, but I'm saying, to me, it's the same as when transgender people say, well, what about hermaphrodites? You know what I mean? To me, like that, it's the same vibe to me. I don't think people with vitiligo or albinism matter, because we know that they have a race and then they have a genetic condition that is causing pigmentation problems. I think that those people don't matter to this discussion any more than a hermaphrodite or a person with a chromosomal disease matters to the transgender discussion. Because a genetic mutation, right? A harmful genetic mutation cannot be compared to a perfectly healthy person in any way, shape, or form. So I would say it doesn't fit into this at all. Now, her hair is fried as heck, okay? I guarantee you her hair is meant to be more curly than that. Look, we know what bleach does and heat styling does to hair. Her curls do not look healthy. They do not look healthy at all. But I'll let her carry on and talk about it. But I just wanted to remind you guys, remember, the Black community embraced her. Her father's new Black wife, after he left her white mother at the age of 8, embraced her.
But when I was younger, I looked like a nappy-headed, big fro chick. I just looked like nobody could do anything with my hair. My mom didn't know what to do. My dad didn't know what to do. It wasn't until my dad married a Black woman that she started being able to do something with my hair. And I started feeling like a human again, and like I was beautiful, and like I had reason and purpose to live. So then
So she said that Black woman her father married gave her a reason and a purpose to live. You heard it, right? That Black woman gave her a reason and a purpose to live, whereas her white family completely and utterly rejected her. I want us to remember these words that come out of her mouth, because those of you who have seen this interview knows that she tries it. She tries it with Black women later. But remember, the purpose of the person that gave her a purpose to live was a Black woman. The person that got her together was a Black woman. Just keep that in mind.
An interesting point of view. What if, Tony, there is a light-skinned Black woman whose mother is Black and whose father is Black?
Yeah, and this is exactly, I'm glad you asked that question, because I feel like from both perspectives, this is honestly more so a societal problem. And that's why I even said I made a video about this on my YouTube channel when I said that I feel as if you honestly should identify what you feel you most fit.
You know, this is a problem for me. I'm going to skip over what she says. This is a problem for me because I have a light-skinned sister, okay? I have a light-skinned sister and her parents are both my color, right? She comes from two Black people, genuinely two Black people. My father is the exact same color as I am, right? Both of her parents are whole Black people. She is light-skinned. I guarantee if you guys saw her, you would not think that she was mixed, okay? She's not giving mixed. She's giving light skin. She's not giving mixed. She's not giving ambiguous. She's not giving any of that. She's giving light-skinned Black girl. We know, and this happened, my grandmother looks like this. I have aunts, cousins that look like this. I've talked about this. There are women in my family, they pop out with honey blonde hair, light eyes. My sister has a lighter color eye. My dad's eyes are hazel. My sister has light brown eyes or green eyes. Do you know what I'm saying? Honey blonde hair, light skin, but that honey color that two people my complexion can make does not read as mixed. And we all know it. So I don't think it's fair to compare a person where they have two parents that look like me to somebody who has an entire white parent, because it is not just the fact that they're not the darkest of the dark. It's that you have an entire white parent.
And I think from what Cynthia was saying was more so along the lines of people that don't have that cultural experience. And that's why I feel it just gets to be a very sticky situation, a sticky topic, because Black women, we do honestly struggle with feeling represented and loved and identified, especially when it comes to just like something like hair texture. Growing up, all I saw on like YouTube, it was, first of all, it was hard to find videos with women with my texture. I have like 4A, 4B hair. At first, it was just hard to find Black women in general. Then you have Black.
I don't even think white folk know what you're talking about.
Like just dealing with kinkier textured hair. And then, so you're on these YouTube channels, and then you start seeing women that do have curly hair, but it's not your curls. And that's what's being promoted all the time. And it honestly makes you question, is my hair beautiful? And it takes a lot and a lot of self-love and great parenting to make sure that you truly love yourself and embrace yourself. Because in media, what's considered pretty, if you are a Black woman, a lot of the time are light skin or women with like more European features and curlier textured hair. So that's why I would always consider more of a societal problem, more so than a Black versus mixed problem. There are people that feed into the stereotypes and feed into the issues, but it definitely is something that we see a lot because media is what we see every single day, and it is a problem in society.
Yeah. Crystal, yes, go ahead, Mona Lisa.
I'm sorry, Tammy. Can I say this? I mean, I want to interject that. I would like us to possibly consider the idea that there's Black on Black jealousy. Black on Black jealousy. Like, I have never been discriminated by more people in my life than Black people.
And there it is. Now, remember, later in this conversation, she's going to say that she didn't make this statement. I would like us to consider that there's Black on Black jealousy. But remember, at the beginning of this conversation, what did she say? She said, I was pigeonholed into having to call myself Black. She said, I was pigeonholed into having to call myself Black. Being pigeonholed is a negative thing. She said, I wish I could call myself both. She doesn't want to identify as Black, right? And then she says, well, I would like us to consider Black on Black jealousy, but honey, you already said you're not Black. You said you were pigeonholed into calling yourself Black. Then you went on to say that a Black woman gave you your purpose for living. She said her father's Black wife gave her a purpose to live, to feel beautiful. But then what does she say? She says her white family completely rejected her, but she grew up in the Black community around Black people. And now listen to what she says about Black people now. And this was about the point in this interview where I was like, I've got to make this video because I'm heated.
Possibly consider the idea that there's Black on Black jealousy. Black on Black jealousy. Like, I have never been discriminated by more people in my life than Black people. The white people don't do this to me as much as my own brothers and sisters do it to me.
She said Black on Black jealousy. The white people don't discriminate against her more than her own brothers and sisters do. This coming from the woman who said that her white family wanted nothing to do with her and she doesn't even know them? What? What in the world? Honey, didn't you just say that your family won't even acknowledge you and wanted nothing to do with you? And that a Black woman gave you a purpose to live? But then not 5 minutes later, she's going to say that she's not experienced more. You mean it was less discriminatory for your entire white family to disown you? You've experienced more discrimination at the hands of Black people, but your entire white family disowned you. What? Yeah, she turned into a whole Karen. That was her white mother coming through. Baby, not a Black woman gave you a reason to live and made you feel beautiful. And your white family won't even speak to you. You don't even know who they are. But you've experienced more discrimination in the Black community? What? They don't even want to know you. How do you get more discriminatory than completely disowning somebody? What in the world? Right, Sin. She was a whole liar after that. A whole liar after that. But not your own flesh and blood, not even wanting anything to do with you. And a random Black woman that your father married giving you the reason to live and making you feel beautiful, and you being raised in a community of Black people. And then you telling us that it was less discriminatory. Yes, the gaslighting was crazy. Black on Black jealousy? Not when a Black woman gave you a reason to live. How could it be Black on Black jealousy when you said that Black woman gave you the reason to live? That it was proximity to a Black woman who embraced you that made you feel life was worth living, that made you feel beautiful. And then you have a white family that you don't know at all because they disowned you. And not just the grandparents, the whole family had to disown you because she said she didn't know anything about any of them. Nobody, not an aunt, not an uncle, not a cousin. She knew none of her white family, she said earlier. But Black people are the most discriminatory? Okay.
Dark-skinned Black women have treated me like, how dare you even call yourself Black? You don't know anything about being Black.
Right. So dark-skinned Black women, specifically, she calls out dark-skinned Black women, say, how dare you call yourself Black? Yeah, how dare you? How dare you call yourself Black? Don't. Why don't you respect that a Black woman gave you a reason to live? That the Black woman that your father married, by her own words, gave you a purpose, made you feel beautiful. You can accept all of that graciousness and love without calling yourself a Black woman. Why don't you accept that the Black community embraced you? Most specifically because she is a woman, Black women embraced her. Now, if where we stop it is, look, we embrace you, okay? We'll help you get a reason to live and give you a place to belong. Just don't call yourself Black. You know what I'm saying? It's like, imagine if I invite a woman into my home, y'all. Imagine if I invite a woman into my home. I bring her into my home. I give her a bed to lay on. I let her eat at my table. And then she starts calling herself my husband's wife. Like, heifer, I let you come in the door. I let you stay here. I gave you a family. I fed you. I let you sit at my table. But you aren't my husband's wife. You know what I mean? You're not a wife. You're a visitor. Okay? You are a visitor in this establishment. Don't confuse the hospitality with your opportunity to replace anybody. And that is what she has done. That is exactly what she has done. She has confused Black female hospitality. How dare she call out a dark-skinned Black woman? Honey, she's telling you you're not Black because look at her and look at you. You came out of the vagina of a white woman. You incubated inside of a white woman. You're not Black. You don't even have enough respect for Black women to say, look at all that Black women have given me. When my own white mother didn't know how to take care of my hair, when I did not feel beautiful or valuable or human, by her own words, this is what she said. She didn't feel valuable. She didn't feel human. It was not until a Black woman entered her life, a Black woman married her father and embraced her like her own child, that she found value in herself, that she found beauty in herself. And she's got an issue with the fact that as extending and as loving as Black women were to her, where they drew the line was her ability to equate herself to a Black woman. That's a problem. Is that not disrespectful? A Black woman gave you a purpose, made you feel human, made you feel beautiful by your own words, but you find the Black community more discriminatory toward you than an entire white family who will not even acknowledge that you exist? That's what I'm saying. Look, and this is why I said the biracials who have sense, the mixed people who have sense and who know how to appreciate Black community hospitality and being a part of the family and not get that twisted with trying to replace the heads of the household, they need to speak up and get control over your over these other biracials and mixed people, because this is how people get kicked out of the house. Baby, this is how your luggage gets packed and you get tossed out, and then you're not going to have a place to belong. Because for all the hospitality that she was given, a purpose given to her life at the hands of a Black woman, she has animosity because you cannot equate yourself to a Black woman. You must have it all. It's not enough to be loved. It's not enough to be given a place. It's not enough to be given an identity. It's not enough for somebody to show you how to care for your hair. It's not enough for somebody to make you feel beautiful and valuable. It's not enough for us to befriend you. It's not enough for us to share our men, to share our culture, to share our love with you, a woman who didn't even come from a Black woman. That's not good enough for you. You won't be satisfied until you can completely and totally claim Black femaleness. To you, that is the height of discrimination. You think being told by a dark-skinned Black woman that you cannot call yourself a Black woman is worse than your entire white family disowning you. Where do they do that at? Black women saying, I just want to keep this, we got to keep this one thing to ourselves. You can do everything in the community. It's like God in the tree of life. Do you know what I mean? You can eat of all the trees in the garden, right? But of the tree of knowledge and the tree of, good, the knowledge of good and evil, you shall not eat of that one tree. And she just marched her little bleach blonde self over to the tree and was like, oh, I can't eat from this tree? This is the one thing in the garden you won't let me have? I can be all I want to be in the community except for a Black woman? Oh, and then she wants to fixate on the one tree Black women were like, you can eat of all the trees of the garden, but of the one tree of Black femaleness, you will not eat of it, nor shall you pluck off of it, or we will kick you out the community. And she was like, strangely, all of the fruit and berry bushes in the garden, all the fruit trees and delicious things to eat in the Black community, but I must have this one thing. This one thing you cannot have, and that is my identity. Oh my goodness. Especially dark-skinned Black women are the most discriminatory against me. It's like, baby, you got to eat of all the trees of the garden. Back up. Like, can we keep one tree to ourselves? The tree of the fruit of our identity, can we have that? You can eat all the other stuff. It's a smorgasbord out here. You can have everything else in the community. Knock yourself out, sweetie. You just cannot have our identity. That's crazy. That is out of control to me. It's like, that is a problem, but let's continue.
My light-skinned sisters have said, because you got that skinny nose and those tiny lips is why you can get away. You're a passe blanc, as they say in New Orleans. That means pass for white. Cynthia, you're itching and you're squirming in your seat over there. Are you jealous?
No, I'm actually offended as a Black woman because all I'm hearing is why it's beneficial for biracial people to identify as Black, but they're not thinking about how that's a detriment to Black women. And so for me, if I'm sitting here with two Black parents and a biracial person that has a white parent and a Black person is saying that they're Black, then that has to make me question, what am I? Am I a lesser Black woman? Because we certainly don't, like, we don't share the same phenotype, we don't share the same genetic makeup, we don't share the same hair texture. It is very clear that Crystal and Mona Lisa have a different parent than I do. It is very, very clear. They have a different phenotype than I do. So for biracial people even to go with the narrative that they're being discriminated against by Black women because Black women want to keep our identity to ourselves because we understand how you benefit from our identity, not only in the white community, but you benefit in the Black community as well. So I just think that biracial women have zero respect for Black women. I think they don't like Black women, because if you did, you would consider how you're co-opting of our identity rather than just sticking to your own, which is biracial. Then you can't possibly care. Like, why are you discounting your white parents? That's what I don't understand. And why won't you classify as white?
Crystal, that's a good question. Why won't you classify as white? There's an old movie, and classic, The Imitation of Life. There's a biracial woman who refuses to identify as Black. I mean, in all honesty, don't you benefit and privilege? Aren't you privileged to be biracial more so than a Black woman, Crystal?
Absolutely not. You know, actually, for me, I find it offensive to hear that, because at the end of the day, I feel we do get discriminated from on both sides. It's not a benefit being, identifying as Black. It's not a benefit identifying as white. We don't fit on either side. Black women clearly, I feel like, don't like racial women for the simple fact that we're 100% Black.
Black women don't like biracial. So it's all coming out, y'all. It's all coming out. Black women, Black women, Black women, Black women, Black women, dark-skinned Black women. Black women have the problem. See, and once Bleach Blonde, I can't remember her name, Mona Lisa, once Mona Lisa brought the dark-skinned Black women out the bag, then Crystal felt emboldened. But I thought your mom was a Black woman, except for in skin color, Crystal. So what did Black women do to you? Didn't Crystal say her mom was Black in every way except for her skin color? Didn't Crystal literally say that her mom was basically a Black woman? She had a big booty, was raised by a Black Panther, right? Talks Black, everything but skin color was Black. But now all of a sudden, Black women, something, 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 Crystal, I thought your mom was Black, except for in skin color. I thought you were raised by essentially a white-skinned Black woman in your own terms. But it's funny how All that blackness disappears when it comes time to rally against Black women. Oh, Mona Lisa opened the door, dark-skinned Black women, blah, 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 jealousy. And then Crystal was like right on there, you know, especially Black women, Black women, Black women. Look, and this is, it's the disrespect for me. It's the absolute and blatant disrespect for me. Like, it all comes out in the wash. It's no longer the Black community. It's Black women in particular. And although everybody was trying to act crazy when Cynthia said this issue affects Black women the most, it's funny how once they started to get that itch under their skin, the conversation became not about the Black community letting them be Black, but about Black women allowing them to assimilate Black female identity. So it seems like Cynthia was very on point when she initially said, this is a problem that is solely affecting Black women. And everybody tried to act like they didn't know what she was talking about. But once they got into their feelings, all of a sudden it was dark-skinned Black women jealous this, Black women that. Crystal's mom has now transferred from being a Black woman in everything but the shade of her skin to now her mom is no longer a Black woman because Black women have wronged her in some way. 10 minutes ago, her mom was a Black woman, except for the fact that her skin was white. And this is, you know, this is, like I said, this is how you get kicked out of the community. Somebody said, I would need some sensible biracials to come up and have a conversation. I think so many Black people date out because they do not like Blackness, that the majority of biracials have this kind of disrespectful attitude. I think there are Black men and women that are dropping the ball when it comes to teaching their biracial children loyalty to the Black community, that they're part of the Black community, but you do not get to replace Black people. You don't get to adopt the identity of Black people. What does it mean to be mixed, right? If you and I are the same. What kind of honor does that give to your Black parent if you try to act like you were no different from them? What respect does that show for Blackness?
It's not our choice. Secondly, I don't identify as white because my white side of my family is not all white. They are themselves biracial.
So wait, she said the white side of my family is not all white, so I don't identify as white. Now let's hear her confused logic.
I'm going to identify as something that I am not completely of just because my skin tone is a lot fairer.
So if you're not biracial, why are you representing biracial then?
I represent myself as Black, and I stated that when she asked.
Let's take a quick break. Back to Business of Being Black with Tammy Mack, where the business of being Black today is biracial people. What should they be identified as? Tony, Mona Lisa said that when she was born, her grandparents, who are white, said, I want to have nothing to do with that N-word child. And I'm presuming, Mona Lisa, they stuck to that till the day they died.
They did.
So how does that gel with what we're talking about today, Tony, in terms of her identifying as white, but white people won't welcome her? And then it seems as if Black people aren't willing to accept biracial people either.
But that's both of these biracial people, and I think they might be a little less than biracial, but both of these mixed women said that Black people did accept them. Mona Lisa said a Black woman gave her a reason to live. Crystal said that her mom was raised by a Black Panther. So this is what I'm saying. These women were given the access and the benefit of being Black, right? The NAACP, who rocks for everybody now, but people associate the NAACP with Blackness, right? They have been fully embraced and back-patted by the Black community. They haven't been held out of the Black community in any way, shape, or form.
Biracial people people tend to do. They will say that, I can't identify as white, which we know white is closed. We know that white is a protected identity because there's power that comes with exclusivity. So whiteness is off the table. It's just not an option. And that's the reality of why biracial people don't identify as white, because they can't. But I'm pretty sure they will love the social prestige and privilege that comes with being white, but they don't have that option. So what they do is they want to bogart into the Black community, specifically on Black women, and say, I'm Black, I want your identity because my white side won't let me use theirs. And if you don't allow me to use it, then I'm going to call you racist. But there's nothing more racist than, number one, your white parent disowning you because you're Black, and then not even allowing you to identify as white because you're Black. But yet, they don't have a beef with the white community because they can't be white. They have a beef with the Black community who won't, or Black women, because we don't want them taking our identity because there's negative consequences about that. That's why I'm saying biracial people don't care about Mona Lisa.
I want her to jump in here. Mona Lisa, do you not identify as white because you can't identify as white, as Cynthia G said?
No, that's absolutely incorrect. And
She says that's absolutely incorrect, right? She says that's absolutely incorrect. She says, I don't not identify as white because I can't identify as white. That is absolutely incorrect. Is that what she's saying? Let's go back to it. Hold on. Is this where she talked about it right here? Let's see.
But my complexion doesn't show that.
So why should Black people care, Mona Lisa? Why should Black people care what biracial people identify as?
I think Black people should care about what multicultural and biracial people identify as, because we're human too. We want to take a place in this life as well, and we want to identify as being something just like everyone else wants to identify, but we don't want to be pigeonholed into making a choice. Like, my father is African American and my mother is Italian, and I'm from the 60s, born in the 60s, shall I say. And from that very moment, especially in the 80s and in the South, I had to make a choice.
So first of all, she said she was pigeonholed. Remember? I had to rewind it because, they lie. She said I was pigeonholed into making a choice. Now, Sin said, you can't identify as white. And she said, that's absolutely incorrect. But then listen to what she said earlier in the conversation. She said, I was pigeonholed into making a choice.
When I went to the driver's license bureau on whether or not I was a white woman or a Black woman. And when I spoke to the woman at the counter, I said, hey, I'm mixed. I'm biracial. And in those days, we called ourselves half-breeds. And I don't want to make a choice as to whether or not I'm Black or white. I want to choose both. And she says, honey, if you got 1 ounce of Black in you, baby, you just got to put Black. So mark it. And then she said, next.
I'm sorry. Let's go back. Because the lying is a bit much for me.
Identify as white because you can't identify as white, as Cynthia G said?
No, that's absolutely incorrect.
It's absolutely incorrect. Did she not just tell us the whole story about how she was pigeonholed into not being able to pick white? Is that not like the first, when she introduced herself, that's the first thing she talked about, was being pigeonholed and not being allowed to choose, and the one drop rule applies to you, and next. And she said the person that did that was a white woman. The way she said it, I thought she was talking about a Black woman. Remember when we discussed that? But she says no. And even the host, Tammy, was like, oh, it sounds like that was a Black woman. And she said, no, she was white. Is that literally not what Sin just said, though? And I agree with Sin. Why the energy for the Black community, the one community that embraces you, but you don't have that smoke for your other side. You don't have that smoke for your non-Black side. And then when she's called out on the fact that she doesn't have an option, she says that's absolutely incorrect. As if we literally didn't hear her tell a whole story about how she was pigeonholed into calling herself Black by a white woman at the DMV. I cannot. I can't do it.
Never said it was racist either. I said jealous. Let's consider the word jealousy here. I don't consider, let me just say this.
She didn't say the word racist. She said the word discrimination, and she did say jealous. I'll say, yeah, she didn't say racist. She said discrimination. And she said black on black jealousy.
60s to about the 80s, they forced me, the government, meaning by my driver's license, by, everything that I had to fill out paperwork-wise, they forced me to choose that I had to identify as Black.
So again, she's saying Cynthia's right. You couldn't choose white. Why isn't the fight the ability to choose white? She said she was pigeonholed. But when Cynthia called it out for what it is and said, why don't you take that energy to your white side? Why disrespect Black people, specifically Black women, because they specifically came for Black women, but you don't want to take this conversation to your white side? You feel pigeonholed, you feel forced by a white ran government, but Black people have discriminated against you the most.
Internal being struggled with the idea that I wanted to be both, because my mother was still present in my life, even though she was, divorced from my father. She was still present, and I still got to experience her. But, I don't feel like in any way, shape, or form, as we started to move into the 90s and the 20s and stuff like that, in the 2000s.
No, Sin, you're right. Sin said they're saying they're Black based on the one drop rule, while ignoring that the one drop rule was created by white people to make white identity exclusive. I don't think they're ignoring it. I think that they know. I mean, they're Black women, aren't they? Isn't that what they say? They know what that one drop rule was for. We all know as Black people. They claim they're Black. But I think that this is the white motherhood in them coming through. I'm just going to keep it 1,000. These women came from the bodies of white women. They view Black women and they view these societal issues from a white female perspective, period. They think like white women. And so the blame isn't with the grandparents and the white family that disowned her. The blame isn't with the white man government that pigeonholed her, in her own words, into picking Black, right? The blame isn't with the acceptance that one of their sides will not allow them to be a part of their community. The blame is with Black people. The vitriol is toward Black people because they have a white, a Eurocentric ideology, because they were raised by white women. And even though Mona Lisa said a Black woman gave her a reason to live, and even though they have both been embraced by the Black community, they still have a lot of vitriol and hatred and anger toward Black women, specifically darker Black women. Black women that are the antithesis of what they are, the complete opposite of what they are. Because next to those women, the foolishness of calling themselves Black women will stand out the most, because it becomes ridiculous when you put yourself next to an unambiguous dark-skinned Black woman. Then the breakdown of the argument becomes obvious. And I think that's why they have the most vitriol. I don't even think that they're ignoring it. I think they cannot see to place the blame anywhere but on the Black shoulder, because they have a white worldview. They were raised by white women, and they have a white female view of things. You know, the kind to throw rocks and then hide your hands. You know, like the white girl that walked into the brother's apartment and shot him dead. You know what I mean? That group of white women that had that sister at their home, and the Black woman just turned up dead. And then everybody's playing innocent and crying, well, you know, and crying as if they're the ones that have been damaged. That they have a white female world view because they were raised by white women. I mean, don't let the little splash of melanin and the curly hair fool you. They are fully mentally white women, clearly.
started moving into that, I started to see the evolvement of mankind, and I started to see that the younger people are starting to come to the table and demand that multicultural and biracial individuals be seen and be heard and be notified, be categorized as a particular person. I was just filling out my health insurance paperwork yesterday, and that was one of the boxes I could check, and I just got so elated. I didn't know.
When you say that, you mean biracial?
It said multicultural.
Multicultural.
And
so she got elated when she saw that box and that she could check it, right? It made her feel elated. But then if it made her feel elated, then why did she feel, like we were listening to her earlier, she felt animosity towards, specifically, she said, dark-skinned Black women who were telling her she could not be Black. She could not call herself a Black woman, right? We'll embrace you, but don't call yourself a Black woman. From the beginning of this live until this moment, she has said she doesn't want to be Black. She does not want to be made to pick. So when Black women, she said dark-skinned Black women specifically, told her that she could not call herself a Black woman, why would she have a problem with that when she, by her own words, has never wanted to claim Black? So if you never wanted to claim Black, then why do you find it discriminatory against you when dark-skinned Black women, as she put it, tell her that she's not Black? That's never what you wanted anyway, right? And this goes to what Sin was saying. She's actually proving Sin's point is you've never had a choice to do otherwise. And she says that's absolutely not true, but then she talks about how she's never had a choice to do otherwise. And when she finally saw the option to pick multicultural, she was elated. Elated, beyond happy. It's the disingenuous nature of this conversation that I have a problem with. It's a very, very disingenuous conversation. I don't think I'm even going to continue with this. I'm kind of just tired of it. I was really over it when she came for dark-skinned Black women. At that point, I was over the whole conversation at that point. It was like, after you say that a Black woman gave you a reason to live, the only thing that Black women wouldn't give you was their identity, and you have a problem. That was about the time in this whole video where I was pretty much done. I really didn't need to hear anything else. You just sat there and said the Black community gave you a place. A Black woman made you feel worthy, made you feel life was worth living. She made you feel beautiful. And then you turn around and you get upset because the one thing that Black women said you couldn't have was their identity. You could have everything else but that. And the minute I heard that, it was a wrap for me for this conversation. I was like, okay, well, then that's the problem. It's not that Black women or the Black community is not embracing you. It's that you want everything. You are like your white bloodline colonizing everything. It's not enough for you. Isn't that exactly what the European did everywhere they went? They would go and the native people would share their food. They would give them presents. If they had gold or jewels, they would share it. But it wasn't enough for them to be able to step onto those soils and enjoy the foods and enjoy the culture and enjoy the gifts. They had to own it and possess it as their own. That is very, very Eurocentric. That is a very white attitude. That is exactly why you're not Black. Because the ideologies of your whiteness run deep in you. Being embraced, being loved, being catered to is not enough. You must possess the lands, right? You must possess the lands. Everything must be yours. It cannot be shared with you. It must be yours. And that's what they're saying. It is hateful for you not to let it be mine. It's not enough to be invited, to be treated as family, to be loved. It's not enough. I have to possess the very thing that is yours. I don't want you to share it with me. I want you to give it to me and let it be mine. I think that's like the essence of how white people destroyed the planet. That's the legacy of the European. The legacy of the European is their inability to accept being embraced without taking everything. The legacy of the European as a collective is that when they see something that they desire, they don't know how to accept what is given. They have to take more than that. And they take it violently, either through gaslighting, as was done here, manipulation, outright violence. So with that said, I think I'm done with this. I can't even go through the rest of it. I don't think there's a point. But I think that, it is a responsibility of people who create biracial children that the first thing that your child learns is, number one, we are different, right? And that the thing that makes you special is that I am a part of you. You are a part of this community, but being a part of this community means that you owe loyalty to that. When you look at your Black parent, there's something that comes with that Blackness, right? That should be respected. And for a child to grow up with a fully Black parent and not learn to respect Blackness and Black people is a problem. And I blame their Black parents for that. In this case, it's two Black men, but in, Tandy Newton's case, she had a Black mother, right? If a Black person doesn't respect their own Blackness, when they have a mixed child, this is what you produce. You produce a child that thinks that Blackness is a thing to be owned. It's a thing to be acquired and stolen. It's a thing to be claimed. They want to plant their flag on Blackness because a Black person never taught them this land is already somebody's. You can see the sights and enjoy the indulgences, but you never take it as your own. You can defend your bloodline, but you never claim that you stand the same as the people that created you. It was just a lot of confusion in this. It was a lot of confusion. And a lot of the reason why, even though I don't have a problem with interracial relationships, I personally don't promote them because this is what we create. And what's happening right here in the United States is what happened to the Aboriginal people too. They have full-on blonde hair, blue-eyed people taking their reparations. Those Black Aboriginals, there's only about 25,000 of them left at this point. 25,000 of them left. Most of the people who get that reparations money that was given to the Aboriginals are not Black because we have let the mulattoes, the octoroons, and the quadroons just run amok with no respect for actual Blackness. We should not even indulge these conversations with them. It's a problem for them to even think that they can have this conversation. Those ladies should have come up there and said, I love Black people. I love my Black parent. I'm grateful that I was given a home in the Black community because the white community did not give that to me. But I don't desire to claim being a Black woman. I am happy to just be partially Black. And I want to respect my parents' heritage by helping them preserve their Blackness. Had they been raised right, that's would have been what was said, and that would have been the end of the discussion. Because you're on code. But that's not what those ladies came up and did. So make of it what you will. I agree, India, right? I think mixed people have a very different plight. So with that said, I'm going to get out of here and I will talk to you guys later. Yeah, Crystal was like, let me play the lying game. Seriously. I was like, this girl is just making stuff up as she goes along. She's a whole compulsive liar out here. Anyway, let me talk to you guys later.